On the morning of September 26, 1989, Skylink Flight 070, a Fairchild Metro 3, took off from Vancouver on a scheduled domestic flight to Terrace, British Columbia. The aircraft carried 2 crew, 5 passengers, and some cargo. This is a computer reconstruction of Flight 070 based on the sequence of events as determined from the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. At 8:11 Pacific Standard Time, the crew of Flight 070 requested and received descent clearance to 15,000 feet from Vancouver Centre. Shortly after receiving clearance to descend to 15,000 feet, the crew contacted Terrace FSS for the latest weather conditions. The weather in Terrace at the time was partially obscured, 600 feet scattered, 3,500 feet scattered, 12,000 feet scattered, with an estimated ceiling of 25,000 feet broken. Visibility was 5 miles in fog and smoke. The temperature was 7 degrees Celsius with a dew point of 6 degrees Celsius. The wind was reported calm, and the altimeter setting was 29.97. Clouds were 1/10 fog, 1/10 stratus, 2/10 smoke, altocumulus 1/10, and cirrus 1/10. Visibility south of the airport was 1 mile in patchy fog. At 8:18, Flight 070 was cleared to hold at the Kitimat non-directional beacon because a Learjet had missed its approach at Terrace. A hole in the fog opened up, however, and at 8:20, the Learjet landed on runway 15. Flight 070 was cleared for an approach to Terrace. The crew elected to carry out a localizer DME approach to the airport, circling to runway 15. Flight 070 crossed the Terrace non-directional beacon at 8:21, and when the instrument approach was completed, the aircraft began circling runway 15. At about this time, the aircraft was observed on what corresponded to a downwind leg for runway 15 at about 500 feet above ground level, flying straight and level over the threshold of runway 27 with the landing gear down. It began its final descent with flaps lowered to full. 26 seconds after selecting full flap, a missed approach was initiated and the landing gear and flaps were selected up. Within 5 seconds, the aircraft began to accelerate and approached a rate of ascent of 1,200 feet per minute. This quickly diminished, and the aircraft began to descend, with the rate of descent increasing to 3,000 feet per minute. Flight 070 crashed just outside the airport perimeter, 800 feet west of the center line of runway 15. There were no survivors. Like most accidents, the Skylink crash was the result of a sequence of events which by themselves might not have caused an accident. The Transportation Safety Board's occurrence report contains some 25 findings, links in an error chain that combine to culminate in an accident. We're going to look at some of these links as they pertain to pilot decision-making, resource management, and spatial disorientation. This should have been a routine flight. The investigation found no evidence of mechanical or structural failure. There were no indications that the aircraft's weight and center of gravity were out of limits, and the crew was certified and qualified for the flight. As for the local ceilings and visibilities in the immediate vicinity of Terrace Airport, they were extremely variable. The winds were calm, the altimeter setting was 29.97, and there was no reported traffic. Visibility to the south had been reduced to 1/2 mile. The smoke in the vicinity of the airport was fairly dense. The crew was then given the information that a Learjet on its second approach was able to land on runway 15. They were also told that there had been 2 slash burns started the evening before southwest of the airport, and that was where the smoke was the densest. After receiving this information while continuing descent, the crew decided to change the original plan to land on runway 30 and try for runway 15. This decision was communicated to the FSS. When the Learjet landed, a fog bank 300 feet thick and moving in a northeasterly direction obscured the southern half of runway 15. Please note that Flight 070's 5-parameter recorder did not contain roll or pitch, and that the heading data malfunctioned. As a result, the flight path is depicted as a straight line, even though we know the aircraft executed a circling approach to runway 15, as indicated by this curved line. The aircraft attitude also remains constant, due to the lack of roll and pitch data, except for the final seconds where the pitch attitude was simulated. The descent continued, The flaps were lowered to 1/4 and then to 1/2. The landing gear was then lowered. Final checks were completed. The captain requested that the co-pilot read the altitudes permitted in the descent off the approach chart. Co-pilot called 1,000 above. At this point, the aircraft passed the beacon inbound. The FSS was advised that the aircraft had just passed the beacon. Co-pilot called 500 above. The FSS informed them that the approach lights were on runway 15. Co-pilot called 100 above and commented on the poor weather conditions. The approach continued. They were able to see the ground. V reference speed was requested by the captain and confirmed by the co-pilot as 107 indicated airspeed. Comment was again made on the poor weather conditions. They were now 100 feet above minimums. The captain indicated he saw the button of a runway, probably 33.
Okay, I got the button.
He then saw runway 27 and asked for speed calls.
Get ready on
The co-pilot again commented on the poor weather. What follows now is a dramatic reconstruction of the remainder of the cockpit voice recording.
Okay, I got 27. Jeez. Okay. Yours. Showing 145 descending. Okay. Full flap. Full flaps on the way. In the mist. Okay, you're up. Gears coming up. You're up. Gears coming up. Flaps up. Flaps coming up to half. Descending. Okay. Descending.
The reconstruction raises a lot of questions for discussion. For example, the crew made several statements indicating their level of concern about the weather. Was each crew member equally concerned about the weather? How were those concerns communicated? Earlier in the flight, the approach briefing given by the captain did not include a complete description of the approach, the missed approach procedure, the status of the aircraft navigation aids, or the speeds to be flown. Was either crew member ever contemplating a missed approach? Fact. The crew descended below minimum descent altitude and configured the aircraft for landing going as low as 150 feet above ground, 40 seconds prior to impact. Did the crew have the required visual acquisition of the landing runway environment? Here's another fact. Skylink had been granted a waiver to operate the Metro 3 aircraft under ANO Series 7, number 3, which is the air navigation order covering small airplanes in air transport operations. Let's watch the last 2 minutes of the reconstruction again.
Holy shit. Okay, I got the button here. Get ready on the full flap. Yep. Monitor airspeed for me. Okay, you're at 140. Okay, I got 27. Jeez. Okay, yours. showing 145 descending. Okay? Full flap. Full flap's on the way. In the mist. Okay, you're up. View's coming up. You're up. View's coming up. Flaps up. Flaps coming up to half. Descending. Okay. Descending.
So far, we have focused on pilot decision-making and resource management issues. But spatial disorientation, you might call it vertigo, might have been another link in the error chain. Misperception of pitch attitude, technically called a somatogravic illusion, can result from an aircraft's acceleration during the first seconds after a missed approach procedure is initiated. When there are no visual references, it is not possible to distinguish between a pitched-down aircraft accelerating and a pitched-up aircraft flying at a constant speed. This final sequence of the reconstruction shows the aircraft with a simulated pitch attitude. A ghost aircraft depicts the perceived pitch attitude. Notice that at the beginning, both the perceived and simulated pitch attitudes are the same. The aircraft is neither accelerating nor decelerating, and the crew perceives the pitch attitude to be that of the actual pitch attitude. As the aircraft begins pitching down and accelerating, the perceived pitch attitude is that of a pitched-up aircraft. Did either crew member believe the aircraft was pitched down? Who was flying the aircraft? Who was monitoring the instruments? And who was controlling the throttles? In the case of Flight 070, links in an error chain seem to have combined to cause the crash. Factors concerning pilot decision-making, resource management, and spatial disorientation may have turned what should have been a routine flight from Vancouver to Terrace, British Columbia, into a tragic accident.